What? Wow, this is so fun. Woo! Get out of my way.
It's all about humanity.
Go, 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 go. Yeah, we got the last little bit there. This Flicker Strike cast on freeze Ranger Deadeye build is a fantastic change of pace from the usual Lightning Arrow setups. Its clear potential is epic, and it has a fairly decent boss killing prowess. This build utilizes a combination of Monk and Ranger tech, which I will go over later in this video, and this keeps our clear speed fast and consistent, deleting elites and bosses with impressive ease, making mapping a really steady and fun experience. Whilst this build is working really well, there are some areas which I will be improving in future videos, so be sure to drop the video a like and sub to the channel to keep informed. I'm also streaming on YouTube and Twitch, so jump in and come ask any questions. Now, let's get into it. Now, in terms of the skills, there's quite a lot going on here, and I'm going to approach this as though you are a Ranger player that has never played Monk before, doesn't understand any of the mechanics or the tech, because that's where I was at when I started trying to play this, and I will break it down as simply as possible. And the first thing that you need to be aware of before we go into any of the damage output or any of the defenses is what the backbone and the cornerstones of this build are. And it's one simple thing, folks. You need to generate power charges, and lots of them. And you might be thinking, well, FaZe, how on earth do I do that when Rangers only generate frenzy charges? We can alleviate this problem with this node here, Resonance. Gain power charges instead of frenzy charges, and this is the backbone of the build and really the cornerstone of how you need to approach everything and be thinking. And we then slip back into our old Ranger tech, and I'll explain why. Combat Frenzy grants you frenzy charges when you freeze, electrocute, or pin an enemy, and this can only happen every few seconds. Profusion gives us supported skills having a 50% chance to grant an additional charge, so this can sometimes get us 2 charges if we freeze an enemy, and that is why we are focusing on using the Herald tech that we've used in previous Deadeye builds, and also the Pulsar Cone, giving us enemies chilled by your hits can be shattered as though frozen. So we take the Herald tech, which swaps the elements, which I'm sure you're very familiar with by now. We take Glaciation, Cold Infusion, Cold Penetration, Long Shot in our Herald of Thunder, and we take Innovate, Lightning Infusion, Overcharge, and Conduction in our Herald of Ice to create that lovely rolling synergy that just makes screens clear. They proc each other essentially, and in this build it's also freezing constantly, which means we are constantly getting those charges, sometimes 2 from our Combat Frenzy, and this is further compounded because we are using Cast on Freeze for our mapping and Horde clear, and this is super effective because we've got it socketed with Sniper's Mark. And what Sniper's Mark does is it marks a target, and the next critical hit that target receive consumes the mark to deal extra damage and grants you a frenzy charge. So if we're critting, we're getting a charge. If we're freezing, we're getting 1 or 2 charges. We're critting a lot because our build, as you'll find out, is very focused on crit chance. So we're just getting charges constantly from our normal attacks, and this means that our Flicker Strike, which is what our focus is in this build, is always up and ready to go. So, with the power charges explained, let's get our teeth into the meat and bones of this build. First of all, we're using Charged Staff. This consumes all power charges to infuse your quarterstaff with electricity, adding lightning damage and lightning shockwave to your quarterstaff attacks. Reusing this skill while the buff is active adds to the buff's duration and damage. Essentially, what you want to be doing, folks, is using Storm Wave, which we'll go over in a moment, or Tempest Flurry, which we'll go over in a moment, to generate those power charges as quickly as possible with the aforementioned tech going on in the background, and get your charge staff up as quickly as possible, because this just makes everything elevate and buff up. We've got Lightning Exposure, so supports any skill that hits enemies, causing it to inflict lightning exposure when it shocks an enemy. For 8 seconds this happens. Then we've got Cold Exposure, causes cold exposure when critically hitting an enemy. We always critical hit enemies, so that's really effective. We then have Strip Away, exposure applied, has a 30% increase. And then we've got Persistence, so Charge Staff just stays up longer. Persistence can be socketed in a few skills in this setup. I've just found this is a little bit easier to maintain charge staff and not have to waste your power charges to get them. It keeps the build moving nice and quickly. And next up, we've got Flicker Strike. This is obviously the headline of the build. And what this does is it teleports to an enemy and strikes them, consumes the power charges to perform additional teleporting strikes on nearby enemies. This is why you see yourself chaining around the screen like an absolute maniac when you have your maximum charges. And this teleports 2 additional times per power charge with 285% more attack speed at level I have it. But something very important before we go into the support gems, you need to get this absolutely leveled up to 20% as soon as possible, folks, because this gives you a 20% chance not to remove the charges on use. So you can probably see where I'm going with this. This just gives you the chance to flicker strike, then flicker strike, then flicker strike. It can sometimes happen that way, and when it does, it's absolutely beautiful. In terms of the breakdown of the skills, we've got Perpetual Charge. Supported skills have a 35% chance to not remove charges, but still count as consuming them. That just continues to help us sustain. We've got Momentum. After moving at least 2 meters during a single use of a supported skill, the rest of that use deals 40% more damage, so we're moving further than 2 meters quite a lot of the time, so that's a really nice increase. We've got Inspiration just to make the support skill cost 40% less mana. This is a problem I have in this build. My mana sustain isn't great. I've got ways around it, which I'll explain, but that's why that's in there at the moment. Obviously, if you can alleviate that problem, then we can put more damage into Flicker Strike. And we've also got Inevitable Critical. Supported skills gain 25% critical hit chance each second, up to 100%. This critical hit chance is lost whenever skills supported by Inevitable Critical critically hit. And then moving on, so this is where our kind of, I would call them our meat and bones sort of DPS output when we're not using Flicker Strike comes into play. I am a massive fan of using Storm Wave. Storm Wave is a sweeping attack that projects lightning bolts through the ground and a long wave ahead of you, and you can see from the footage, this just deletes groups. It can one-shot certain elites as well. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's great for proccing our use of the Herald tech, and it's great for generating those power charges. We've got this socketed with Upheaval. It gives us 2 additional fissures, so that's why we have 3. It lowers the attack speed and lowers the damage. This doesn't matter. It's an absolute must pick, folks. We've also got Ambush, so supported skills have 100% more critical hit chance against enemies that are on full life. So 100% critical hit chance with this skill, because of all the stuff we've just spoken about in terms of the power charge generation, means you are always going to be generating those power charges when you use this skill against mobs. So you're instantly getting your charge staff up, and you're instantly able to start generating the charges to get Flicker Striking. Really, really nice choice. We've also got Rage, so supported skills gain 3 rage on a melee hit. And what Rage does is it grants 1% more attack damage per 1 rage gain to a maximum of 30. So you can stack up to 30% increased attack using this skill, which is fantastic. We've also got Heft in there, which is quite a common one. It gives us 30% more maximum physical damage. This next one, Tempest Flurry. The attack speed on this is absolutely cracked, and the reason why I mainly use this is because it's great at proccing our heralds, and also, look at the level. It's only level 12. Look at the mana cost. It's only 19. This build is mana hungry. If I ever find myself in a bind where I can't use my skills, but I'm getting attacked, Tempest Flurry's there to help. This was a level 5 gem, I believe, when I used it. I've got +7 melee skills, obviously, but that is such a good skill. It's a bit overlooked, actually, I think, at times, and this is socketed with Martial Tempo for 25% more attack speed. It's got 25% more elemental damage from Primal Armament. It's got Electrocute in there. Supported skills cannot shock, but the lightning damage supported from the skills contributes to electrocution build-up. And we've got Practice Combo. This is really important for generating combo points for our bell, which I'll speak about in a moment, and this gives us a 40% chance to build additional combos. Before we move on, just look how fast this goes. It's crazy. And when you have the charge staff up, it creates a little lightning wave in front of it, which you've probably seen in the montage as well, which is absolutely fantastic. It gives it some range. We've been over Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice, but they basically synergize and proc each other. I've talked about that already. Cast on Freeze we've already spoke about. I've got this socketed with Sniper's Mark, as I've explained, to generate those charges. I've got it socketed with Eye of Winter as well to get that critical weakness debuff. And I've also got energy retention in there for 35% chance to refund the energy cost and 40% increased energy gain from impetus. This thing goes off constantly. It is so good. I do want to caveat this by saying Eye of Winter I potentially don't think it needs to be in there for map clearing. I just think it's a bit overkill. I am unsure, and maybe you can help me in the comments with this. When you use a cast on skill, does it cast both things at once, or does it alternate? That's something I haven't found a clear answer to yet. If it alternates, I would say when you're mapping, just use Sniper's Mark on its own and just keep getting those procs as quickly as possible to keep generating power charges. We do use this against bosses with our cast on crit, which I'll go over later on in the video. And then finally, Tempest Bell is what we use to absolutely blow up bosses, and you need 4 combo points to use this. So you want to be using things like Tempest Flurry to generate these quickly with practice combo, and when you drop this down, you can flicker between both the bell and the boss, and this just makes absolute mincemeat when you get the right proc. And if you maintain your charges during this, wow, what an absolute display you get, folks. And this is socketed with Overabundance. That gives us +1 to limit, so we get an additional bell to drop there as well, which is great. Heavy Swing, supported skills have 35% more melee physical damage, but have a little bit less attack speed. It's fine. Font of Rage, objects created by supported skills create a Font of Rage with a 3-meter radius. So that means that Font of Rage grants us 2 rage regeneration per second for you and your allies. Absolutely cracked. And we have Rage Forge. Supported skills consume 10 rage if possible to deal 35% more damage. As soon as you get up to the 10 rage ticks, boom, it'll give you 35% more damage. Absolutely awesome. In terms of defense, we're using Grim Feast, which will come as no surprise. It bolsters our energy shield double when we pick up the soul cores that are dropped when we're killing enemies with this. So mine goes up to nearly 6,000 energy shield when I'm fully charged, which is absolutely great. Final thing to mention, when you are fighting bosses, turn off Cast on Freeze, turn off Grim Feast. Hopefully you've got full charges. And what we do is we take Cast on Critical and we socket it with Sniper's Mark, Eye of Winter, Energy Retention, and Impetus, and we crit constantly. It debuffs them with Eye of Winter, and it keeps us going with Sniper's Mark. You do have sticky starts to the fight sometimes because you're struggling to generate power charges sometimes. You've just got to be mindful of that, but once you've kind of ramped, and if you get kind of consistent at how to do this, you can just absolutely devastate bosses. I will drop in a mention to my good friend Crazy Mr. Pips here, who helped me a lot with the choices in this build. There are a number of techs you can use from the Monk to generate power charges. I will put a link in the description to his recent Flicker Strike build video, which is, it's crazy. Even if you don't play Monk, go and watch it. He's a great creator, and his build is absolutely insane, and I've been really impressed with how he's approached this. He's shared this information with me, which has been really helpful, so go support him, please, folks. Absolute legend. Now, another thing I am a massive advocate for is our channel sponsor, Instant Gaming. Instant Gaming will be offering you new, exciting deals every single day. This is a great opportunity to purchase blockbuster games from this year past, such as Black Myth Wukong or Space Marine 2, or maybe even Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, or perhaps snap yourself up a superb deal on a highly anticipated title coming up early next year, such as Monster Hunter Wilds or Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 at insanely discounted prices. Instant Gaming is 100% legit because they acquire all their keys directly from the source, providing you authenticity without compromise, and this is reflected in their 4.7 Trustpilot score from over 720,000 reviews. Instant Gaming is not just another key marketplace, folks. Everything comes from authorized sellers. So, if you want to save some money on video games and support me and the Phase Shift community, click on the link in the description or the pinned comment below and enjoy those juicy Instant Gaming discounts. Now, back to the video. Now, in terms of the passives, as always, there will be a link to the Mobalytics build in the pinned comment and the description, so you'll be able to check that out at your own pace if you would like to. Essentially, how we've approached this is Deadeye Ascendancy. As always, we've taken Tailwind all the way to the end for obvious reasons. We've taken Called Shots. You can apply an additional mark. The reason I've gone this way is because you can opt to use Freezing Mark as well. I've been switching that in and out, and I'm still unsure. This is why I've said this is a work in progress, to keep your eye out for more videos on this build to keep informed. And then over here, we've taken Avidity. 30% chance that you would gain frenzy charges. You instead gain up to your maximum number of frenzy charges, so you can actually end up just getting 6 straight away. Sick, sick, sick. Absolutely awesome. I will now really quickly break down the route we've taken on the passive tree. We've gone north as quickly as possible. We've actually picked up Honed Instincts really quickly just to get 8% attack speed and extra dex. We've taken it up here into Mana Leech territory. 25% increased Mana Leech. That's just because we struggle with it. And then we've gone round here. We've made sure that we've taken Essence of the Mountain. That's obviously really important for that increased freeze build up and extra cold damage, just further compounding that rolling, shattering effect even more. And it's much like a Deadeye in that respect if you're trying to get that rolling, so that might not be a surprise. The only difference being we've not anointed our amulet with it. And then we've gone back over this way. Now we've taken Crashing Wave, 36% increased damage if you've dealt a crit hit recently. Absolutely all the time, so that's a flat increase most of the time. We've taken Flow Like Water, increased attack speed, dex and intelligence. We've taken a lot of these evasion and energy shield nodes. They just give us loads of survivability. And we've taken Step Like Mist for movement speed and more mana regen and some dex and intelligence. We've gone up here for crit bonus, and 25% crit bonus if you've dealt a non-critical hit recently and 20% crit hit chance. Lovely. And then round this corner here, we've got the Power Within, 20% critical damage bonus if you've gained a power charge recently, +1 to maximum charges. Absolutely cracked. Increased duration. And then we move around here. Some mana regen and magnitude of shock. Mana regen, magnitude of shock. Same here. And then same here. This is a really nice set just to get your lightning damage and lightning procs off more consistently and doing more effective work there. And the mana regen really helps. We've come around here to take crit chance, crit bonus, crit chance 25%, and then lots of energy shield and further mana regen round here just really helps us out. We've then headed up here to head towards both this tree here, which gives us Spectral Ward, +1 to maximum energy shield per 12 evasion on the equipped body armor, and just more defensive nodes there. Eternal Youth, really, really nice. Life recharges instead of energy shield when you take a flask. Your energy shield regens, not your life. Your life recovers like an energy shield. It's a really, really nice one to have if you have a high energy shield setup with Grim Feast like we have. We've then taken Resonance, obviously, which is really important. You need to get there as soon as possible, really, folks. That would be my advice. The sooner you do this, the sooner the build starts to roll and compound. We've taken all these crit chance nodes and crit bonus nodes all through here. Really important. We've gone to this fork here. We've gone south, and we've taken more critical damage power charge type nodes. So we get 20% increased damage, critical damage bonus when consuming a power charge. Same here, and then here +2 to our maximum power charges. My maximum is 6 at the moment. You can push it to 7 if you take this tree down here, but I haven't yet. And then we've come down here to the quarterstaff setup, and this is awesome tree. Just take everything in this tree. I'm not going to read them all out because it'll take ages, but just take all of them apart from these two. It really works nicely. And then because we're using the Herald tech, we're using Herald damage, and Coming Calamity. We get increased damage from having Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ice up. That's really strong. And then taking this crit chance node as well with the crit damage bonus in there really helps us out. And then we've just snuck up here to get ourselves some really, really nice critical chance bonus. In terms of the gear, let's keep this short and sweet. The staff we are using has lightning damage, quite a lot of cold damage, and pretty modest physical damage, and this just helps us continue to proc and roll those heralds and do decent work there. It's also got attack speed, very important, and we've got +7 level to all melee skills. You've got to be careful here, folks, because if you pump these skills too high, your mana will be a problem. Mine is right on the brink at the moment, but we're managing okay, and of course we've got some leech there to help us out as well. This is a great staff. You don't need to get something as good as this. You can actually try and use things like Pillar of the Cage. God, it won't be as effective with this particular setup, but there are ways and means of making that work. And you can go for a staff that's a little bit less crazy with the plus levels. It's not mandatory to have +7. And just look at the elemental damage as being quite important here. Think of it much like when you're trying to get things that are cold to proc when you're playing the range of bow setups that we're also familiar with. It works on the same premise there. We've got Hands of Wisdom in action, obviously with the increased attack speed per 25 dex and the increased lightning from the intelligence. This is just a ridiculous set of gloves that everyone's using them at the moment. We're using Pulsar Kelm. I've got a really nice corrupted one here. I'm really proud of this one. I got it up to 38% increased cold damage, and it's just doing work for me. It's really, really effective, and the bottom line is what we're looking for. Enemies chilled by your hits can be shattered as though frozen. Super effective. We've got a lovely energy shield helm here. I say lovely, it's not the best, but it works. It's got life, it's got increased energy shield. We're up to 368, and that moves us on nicely to our armor choices. Now, this armor is a bit of a double-edged sword. I love it, but I also hate it. This build is suffering because it is pure energy shield, and we are going to be transitioning into evasion energy shield hybrid very, very soon. This gives me plus 50 to all elements in terms of resistance, and it gives me 50 spirit. I need to find something that is a hybrid energy shield evasion rating chest and gives me decent resistances, but I'm then going to have to strip everything out. So for the meantime, this is what I'm using. It's not mandatory. My advice is, if you want to get ahead of the curve with what we're building here, go and get a hybrid setup working with it, because without evasion rating, you can sometimes find yourself in the middle of a pack after you've flicker striked, and you just get decimated because you start flinching and you're not dodging the attacks. That's my advice there, folks. And moving on, we've got this belt, which is 168 max life, 86 maximum mana, and triple res including... No, sorry, it's double res, including chaos, which is very nice. Our boots, pure energy shield again, high max life, lots of energy shield increase, 30% movement speed, so we're missing that 5% from it being bis, and then 20% fire res and lightning res as well. In terms of the rings, I'm using an unset ring, and this is quite important because we need that extra skill slot unless we want to start messing around, swapping skills out loads, like having to take Tempest Bell in and out or something like that when we're fighting bosses and when we're mapping. That's a real pain. So this has got flat cold, flat lightning, a bit of all res, and a bit of mana, and some high regen rate. The high regen rate on your ring is really important if you're having those mana issues, and this is probably a weak link, and I would also argue that maybe this ring setup could be a weak link. You might want to maybe look at getting some absolutely cracked mana breach rings or something like that. That would probably be a step up from this. This is not, by any stretch of the imagination, the best setup possible. And finally, the amulet. We're using a really basic amulet here, folks. We've got plus 14 life, terrible, maximum mana, 42 spirit, 17 all attributes, 17 all res, and 24 fire resist. Not a great amulet by any stretch of the imagination, but what is great is it's anointed with Storm Charge, so 40% increased elemental damage if you've dealt a critical hit recently, and 20% increased critical hit chance. This build is on its way to being finished. It's not there yet, folks. I haven't tested it in pinnacle boss situations, but I am confident it will at least be able to kill level 1 Zesh and level 2 Zesh. We're going to put it through its paces on stream, so do come and check it out. I will be updating this in the coming days once we've spent a little bit more currency to make it that little bit better, folks. Check out this next video. It's got you covered. Take care of yourselves. Keep having fun. Come check out a stream on YouTube or Twitch, and I'll see you in the next one.